Hello, everybody. Dan DeFedericis here from Saratoga Report. And I am here with someone that probably needs no introduction for just about all of you, but just in case I want to introduce, I have the honor of introducing Miss Donna Brothers, a former jockey who rode from 1987 to 1998, retired as the second leading female jockey in the United States by money earned. She had 1,130 wins and more than 18 million in purse earnings. I will add a local note here for you Saratoga fans that she won the 1995 Schuylerville Stakes aboard Golden Attraction. I want to ask you about that a little bit later, Miss Brothers. Since 2000, the year 2000, she's been covering thoroughbred racing and other equestrian events for NBC Sports. And those of you that watch the Triple Crown races know that because within seemingly seconds after the end of the Kentucky Derby, there she is on horseback interviewing the leading rider. And I have to say, that is next to the race itself, that is my favorite part, to get the emotion. You get the emotions out of those riders, Ms. Brothers. I really enjoy that, as does my wife. You were once honored by Sports Illustrated magazine, awarded Best Sideline Reporter of the Year for your on-track reporting, and you've been, since your retirement, you've been very active in both supporting backstretch workers and thoroughbred aftercare. Something we're here to talk about today. I hope I didn't embarrass you, Miss Brothers, with what I still see as a brief recap of your incredible career, but welcome.
Well, you're very kind, Dan. I've had a fun go of it. As you know, my mother was a jockey, so it wasn't original for me to become a jockey. She was one of the first half dozen. And while it's true that I won 1,130 races, my mother won 1,201. So she's still the winningest jockey in our family. And I think that having her hold that distinction is certainly a tribute to what she managed to accomplish long before many of us were even thinking about horse racing.
And, I'm glad you mentioned that. You also have other family members, siblings, I believe, that were jockeys as well.
Yeah, my sister was a jockey briefly. She had 4 children. She married a jockey. They had 4 children, and she rode until they got pregnant with the second of 4. And then my brother started riding when he was 16 because we knew he would outgrow it, and he did. By the time he was 18, he was too big to ride. So they both rode
Okay,
briefly.
wow, that's yes, you immense. I read somewhere you've been immense in this sport since you can remember.
Yes, yeah, from my earliest memory. Yep. My mother started riding in 1969, so I would have been 3 at that time.
Okay. Well, you are coming here in early June here to Saratoga for a very neat event. It's Embrace the Belmont. I have that on the screen there. Acacia Clement, Maggie Wolfendale, Seth Merrill, for an event for an organization very near and dear to my heart, the Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga, which uses the retired racehorses. One of my horses was once there, and for all sorts of therapy, including especially for children and veterans. They're really groundbreaking in certain ways. I actually watched a session there once at an open house they had, so I could actually see what that was happening. But you are co-hosting an event, Embrace the Belmont, which is a kind of my view of a handicapping seminar, but not for the hardcore racing fan or the avid one. It seems like it has a focus on the casual or perhaps even the non-fan who might have an interest in it because it's here. Is that correct?
That is correct. First of all, let me just say about the Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga. As you mentioned, the work that they do is incredible. They have licensed clinicians, meaning psychologists who work with the people, whether it's veterans or children or families who have somebody dealing with some difficult issues, and then incorporate the horses into that therapy. So the work they do is incredible. I haven't seen it with my own eyes yet. I've just seen a couple of videos, and I have visited the farm, but I know how important the work is that they do. And so it was important for us to not only create this event, and I'll tell you the impetus behind that, but also for this event to give back to an organization like that. And so the impetus for this event, Dan, as you know, I bought, my husband and I, our primary residence is in Louisville, Kentucky, but we bought a condo in Saratoga Springs in 2018. And so I've gotten to know the Saratoga community much better in the past few years than I had before. Before, I was always sort of in and out. And what I've recognized is that there are so many business owners and professionals in Saratoga who like the idea of racing, but they don't really understand it, and certainly not enough to wrap their arms around it and feel comfortable inviting people to the track and then showing them how to pick their horse. And so this whole entire thing came about because we thought, what an opportunity with Belmont coming to Saratoga to get the Saratoga business owners and professionals to really understand how to pick their horse to begin with. And then also, who to look for in the Belmont Stakes, especially because they're going to have people who come into their businesses, whether it's a storefront or they're in the real estate business or a lawyer, who are going to ask them, hey, you guys have the Belmont this year. Who do you like? And I want them to know how to pick their horse. And so we're going to start with just a 15-minute handicapping 101 session to break down the hieroglyphics of the past performances. And then we'll move into the handicappers, Acacia Clement, as you mentioned, Maggie, Seth Morrow, and we'll break down those races. Like so far before the Belmont Stakes, we will have run the Kentucky Derby, the Preakness Stakes. The Peter Pan usually affects the top 4 or 5 choices going into the Belmont Stakes. So we'll show replays of those races and then have the handicappers talk about who they like and why, and also help our audience understand how to pick their own horse.
I learned the hard way how important the Peter Pan is. The year that California Chrome ran in the Belmont, for whatever reason, I ignored the Peter Pan winner that year. Had a superfecta that would have hit. Okay, and so I learned I will never overlook the Peter Pan winner again. Thank you.
Yeah.
And you have some experience helping people. 2011, you wrote a book, Inside Track: Insider's Guide to Horse Racing. So you know the industry so well, and you know it from someone helping people pick horses. We'll have to call Northshire Books, make sure they have plenty of copies on hand. And I've not read it yet.
As you can see, that's the 3rd edition. So while I did write it in 2011, the last update was in 2020. So it does have the Triple Crown winners that happened between 2011 and 2020.
So a very current book. Yes. Okay. Excellent. Well, good. I wanted to ask you. So let me recap. This is on June 4th, 5:30 p.m. at the National Museum Racing and Hall of Fame. It's called Embrace the Belmont. It's a pretty modest price to get in here, considering that it's such a wonderful charitable cause, as we mentioned.
Well, we didn't really mention the price. We set the price for the ticket at $56 as an homage to the 156th running of the Belmont Stakes. And
okay.
So next year it'll have to go up by $1, but we're going to do it for the next 2 years. So next year it'll be $57 for the 157th running. And we should mention that you can get your tickets by going to the Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga website, which is thsaratoga.org.
Thank you. I would have. It's on the bottom of your screen, folks. So please log on there, hit the events button, and you could sign up right there. Thank you for mentioning that. I would have gone the whole time without mentioning that, even with my notes.
Thanks for having the graphic, Dan.
I wanted to ask you a couple questions, if you could, at this point, about your career. Let me just go back and just mention, we talked about Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga, Dr. Aaron Christopher Sisk, Meg Koloski. They got a wonderful staff there. And it's just such a good event. I hope to meet you that evening and hopefully learn how to pick the winner, because I sometimes I do okay, but sometimes I say, man, I need to improve as a handicapper.
Dan, I hope it helps me pick the winner. I hear you.
You've got a great connection to Saratoga now, and you have for a number of years. Can you recall your first time there? Was it as a jockey, or was it as when you were younger with your family or something?
Yeah, it's interesting. My understanding is that I was at Saratoga as a child. We were on our way up to Canada, and the horse sale was going on, and I have a vague memory of being there for the horse sale. My mother remembers it vividly, of course, but that, I guess, was my first visit to Saratoga Springs. But my first time to go there that I really, truly recall in my professional life, I was riding that summer at Monmouth Park. I believe it was the summer of 1995. And I was riding at Monmouth Park because I was first call rider for D. Wayne Lucas at Monmouth Park. And he had a couple of horses that he had me come up to ride. And one of them was in the Saratoga Special editor's note. And it was opening day. And we finished 4th. And then the next day I rode golden attraction in the Schuylerville Stakes. And so I won that race. And that meant that my second trip over the Saratoga Oval was a winning one, which made it seem really easy. And as you know, it is not easy to win races at Saratoga. I was really good friends with Julie Crone, and she was riding at Saratoga full time then. And in fact, while I was in New Jersey, I was living in Julie's house in New Jersey, riding there. And so it was nice. It was like I went up and visited my friend Julie, and she showed me around, lay of the land, took me to a couple, she had me, of course, drink out of the big red spring. Didn't warn me about the sulfur water, the
A
trick you
tradition,
play
of
on all the
course.
newbies. Yeah,
Yes, yes.
but it was great.
My daughter still talks about that. I shouldn't do that to a kid, but I think I pointed to an adult drinking it, and the strange look on his face, and she did the math, and
Yeah.
she still talks about that. You mentioned Julie Crone, and let me jump ahead to a question I wanted to ask you. There are not many female jockeys. Where do you see that going? What needs to be done to increase the number of female jockeys in the sport, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, my mother often laments that fact because she often says, I would have thought by now that half the jockeys would be female jockeys, given the rapid progress from when they were first licensed in 1968 to, let's say, 1978. There was quite a lot of progress. But I think really what has slowed the growth of that is the same thing that has slowed the growth of seeing just men who are born in America also come into the sport, because we don't have an agrarian society so much anymore. I grew up riding horses. A lot of the people who I knew who became jockeys who grew up in America grew up riding horses. And there's just not that many people, population wise, who really grew up riding horses. Meanwhile, in a lot of the South American countries or the Latino countries, you have a whole population who grows up riding horses, sometimes to school, sometimes just as a practical thing. They grow up around horses, and then they've got phenomenal jockey schools in Mexico and Puerto Rico, where Johnny Velasquez, the Ortiz brothers came from. And so these guys, and in some cases gals, Carol Cedeno is a Latino, and she's doing great in Delaware, and I think sometimes Maryland. But in any event, they just grow up riding horses, and then they have these great schools that they go to, and they come to the US as really polished riders, way more advanced than the American people who grow up here are when they first start riding. And so I don't think that it has anything to do with, that women haven't advanced. I think it's that the US population hasn't advanced in this particular sort of niche sport because we don't have that agrarian influence anymore. And the other thing is that I think, a lot of the people who do grow up riding, it's expensive. If you don't grow up on a working farm and have horses, it's expensive to have a riding horse. And so these kids come from pretty good families, and they're expected to get a college education before they commit to making a living with horses. And let's be honest, if they're smart, they go ahead and decide to become a doctor or a lawyer and then have a horse as a hobby horse rather than getting into the profession. And so I think it's more just the makeup of our culture these days, and not a reflection on any sort of gender bias.
That is really great insight that I never would have figured out for myself, especially the Latin American component there. Thank you for that answer. It gives me great insight.
Mhm.
Let me talk about thoroughbred aftercare. It's an evolving thing in a good way, from what I can see. I am a small time horse owner, so I've seen it from the horse ownership side and placing horses after their career. It's not an easy thing to do, because you want to trust where you're sending the horse. What have you seen in your time, the evolution of thoroughbred aftercare, perhaps from your riding days to today?
Well, I was fortunate to sit in on the very first meeting that was the impetus for forming the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. And it was in 2012 at Belmont Park. It was Belmont Stakes Week, and it was a meeting that Jack Wolf put together from Starlight Racing. And there were a lot of influential people in the room. Mike Rapoli was there, Todd Pletcher, Graham Motion, John Velasquez, Terry Finley from West Point Thoroughbreds. There were, I want to say, at least 30 people in the room. And essentially, those people put their heads together and said, we need an organization that tries to raise money systemically within the industry. We can't keep having bake sales to raise money for a really large, expensive issue. And we can't keep letting our horses fall by the wayside. So what are we going to do? And so out of that meeting was born the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance. And they have two primary goals. Their very first goal is that they're an accreditation body for aftercare organizations. Before that accrediting body that the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance is responsible for, you didn't have any really sense of knowing that if you were donating money to an aftercare organization, that it was a legitimate, good organization, that the money was going where they said the money was going. So the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance came along and said, we're going to do inspections. They're going to know we're coming every 3 years, but we're also going to have them agree to just pop up on-site inspections, which they all agree to. And so now in the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, there are 81 Thoroughbred Aftercare organizations in there that are accredited bodies all over the United States. And the second thing that Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance does is they're a fundraising body for these aftercare organizations. So if you're not sure which one to donate to, you can donate to the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance, and 90% of the dollars that they raise are going straight to the aftercare organizations. Having said that, they don't raise all the money that these organizations need. So if you have an aftercare organization that you know and love, even if they are accredited by the TAA, if you want to donate to that organization, that would be a worthy donation, because as long as they're accredited by the TAA, you know it's a legitimate organization and that the money is being spent the way they say the money is being spent. And the other thing is, it's just a great thing to support the aftercare organizations locally. We talked about the Therapeutic Horses of Saratoga. Now they have both thoroughbreds and standard breds that are off-track horses. So they don't claim to just do thoroughbreds, but there are so many different varieties. The Thoroughbred Retirement Foundation, which is a sanctuary for horses who can't be ridden. Thoroughbred Horses of Saratoga also wants horses that can't be ridden, because horses that can be ridden still want to be ridden. They like to be ridden. They like to maybe do jumps, maybe dressage, maybe eventing. And so there's just lots of different directions that they can go in now. And that is not something that you could have said 10 years ago. It's really just sprouted wings and flown in the last 10 years, but we still need funding. We still need to try to work on systemic funding within the industry.
Thank you. Again, great insight, especially for someone like me and a lot of my viewers as well. So thank you. I want to hit you with a couple of quick questions, or some fun questions, just some short, quick answers here, if you don't mind. Your favorite place in Saratoga outside of the track?
Well, the park, Saratoga Spa State Park. I love the park. I love the energy of the park. You know, I don't know if people who live in Saratoga all fully understand that those springs bring naturally occurring levels of lithium really high, so that it elevates the naturally occurring levels of lithium. And the science has shown that when you look at areas of the country that have naturally high levels of lithium, you have a lower crime rate. And in areas of the country that have very low levels of lithium, naturally occurring lithium, you have a higher crime rate. And so this is why it feels good to be in Saratoga Springs, but you get that feeling even more when you're over at the park. And I just love the park.
Terrific. I used to get my water from there, and I've been crime free, so good. I don't want to get you in trouble here, but do you have a favorite restaurant or restaurants,
I knew you were
plural?
going to ask me that. Yes, my husband and I have two favorite restaurants, and they are on almost competing corners. Osteria Danu, we've been going to for 25 years, since they were Mia Posto in that little tiny little spot that's now a taco donut shop area, and it
I
used to be 8
all that.
tables. And so it's, yes.
Yes,
So we've been
had a
going to
fire there.
Osteria Danu's for a long. I'm sorry.
Oh, they had a fire there years back in that conglomerate of
Yes.
buildings, if you recall, on Thanksgiving Eve, maybe 8 years ago.
Yes.
Sorry, keep
And so
going.
in any event, we've loved Danny and Patty for years and eaten with them for years. But Solevo, when it came into town, definitely brought in authentic Italian cuisine. There are 4 generations of restaurant owners and operators. And so we really go back and forth. We're at one of those restaurants at least once a week. And yeah, they're on our regular rotation, lots of Italian food. We don't get really good quality Italian food in Louisville, Kentucky. So we're grateful to have it when we're in Saratoga Springs.
Oh, thank you for that. Your favorite natural area, a trail, a waterway, something in and around Saratoga. Do you have one? Well, the park. You did mention the park.
Well, I love this. Yeah, I do love Sleeping Beauty, going hiking up at Bucks Mountain, in the Adirondacks. So I can't tell you exactly how to get there, but you get off the Fort Anne exit and it's
Right.
back in there somewhere. I just follow the GPS, but I love it because when you get up to the top of that trail, you have a
Sure.
beautiful view of Lake George, and it's just a great hike.
Oh, great, great, great. Thank you for that. Your favorite home, house, or building in Saratoga Springs? Do you have one that you just marvel when you drive by it or walk by it?
God, there are so many beautiful places in Saratoga Springs. At least once a year, I have somebody in town, and I drive them down North Broadway to see all the beautiful homes on North Broadway, especially because it's just one right
Yes.
after the other. I can't say that I have a favorite. I have a lot of favorites. Uh, I have a favorite on Regent Street it's on the corner of Regent and Park, and across from that little school. It's a blue house that's just got this beautiful wraparound porch. Yeah, there's just so many. The Bachelor Mountain Mansion is beautiful. Looks like they're doing a lot of work on that right now. The last time I was there, um, and also, we live
Yes.
on Union, pretty close to where Union T-bones into Congress Park. And so if I'm walking into town, I always cut through Congress Park. And I love Congress Park, the ducks and spit and spat and just, all the bucolic settings there.
Oh, thank you so much for all that. And yeah, Bachelor Mansion is my favorite, hands down. So thank you. Well, listen, this was really a thrill. I enjoyed this immensely. Let me just bring it back home to the reason we're here today. Again, folks, Embrace the Belmont, February 4th. Donna Brothers, Acacia Clement, Maggie Wolfendale, Seth Merrill. A great event. Looks fun. Looks interesting, and it looks informative. If you're going to be betting the Belmont, and if you're watching this, chances are you're going to be betting the Belmont. So, Miss Brothers, thank you
And
again for
Dan,
joining
I'll
us here
be
today.
fresh off of oh, sorry. I'll be fresh off of
Oh,
covering the Kentucky Derby and the Preakness Stakes for NBC Sports. So it's actually going to be nice for me to sit this one out because the third leg of the Triple Crown is on Fox Sports rather than NBC. So I get to sit this one out, but the Embrace the Belmont event gives me a chance to still feel like I'm embracing the Belmont. So I'm going to embrace it with everybody else.
oh, that's great. Thanks for that clarification there. Thank you so much. Well,
Uh-huh.
enjoy it. Safe travels up here. Safe travels when you go to Baltimore. And I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks for having me on and for promoting this event. It's going to be a great event.
Absolutely. Take care.